number 4, and that's a sewer comprehensive plan and rate analysis, and that will be presented to us by Mr. Steve Goins, our Community and Economic Development Director.
Terry has a presentation that will be part of the dialogue this evening. Just in general, overarching, looking at this from far away, I wanted to provide some overview as to what's happened in terms of improvements and needs that we've addressed within our sewer utility over the years. We're in the throes of finalizing a comprehensive plan update for the utility that will forecast what we're doing over the next 6 and 20 years. And as part of that, we've done a financial analysis of the utility. And we'll discuss the rates that we're proposing as part of this presentation. But sort of as a precursor to that, giving you some description of sort of how we got here, what's happened over the years and why. I start off with this slide only because it sort of puts everything in perspective in terms of the need here. The hierarchy of needs here is not, in fact, some self-actualization, but we're providing some more basic needs here. We're providing a sanitary city to live in. Civilizations before sewers came along had a tough time dealing with this, but as people understood sickness and medicine, they made the connection. And we're down here in the bottom in security and protection somewhere, but it's a very basic service that we provide, but an important one for the city. In terms of background, the city's been under administrative order from Ecology for a number of years. This is a quote from one of the letters we have. These orders have been modified over time. In 2008, there was a concern about the amount of I&I inflow and intrusion into the system, and the collection system, as is quoted here, becomes hydraulically overloaded when heavy rains occur. What folks were experiencing out and about in the community were surcharging manholes, parks that were being flooded with raw sewage, and other issues that Ecology said, you must take care of this. You must do something to address these concerns. In more recent times, we've had problems that in relation to the I&I have resulted in permit violations from our downtown plant. The downtown plant is upgraded now, but at the time we were dealing with this, we had a very old plant that was past its design capacity, and we were trying to understand how to go about taking care of these orders and address these sanitary issues. Ecology was asking us to be proactive. So, a little bit of a description about our inflow and intrusion, particularly in the downtown basin. Some of the systems that were here were built in the 20s and 30s. At the time, the technology was to actually build a leaking sewer system, and that was part of the way to address effluent, was to allow it to leach into the soil, into the groundwater, and just get rid of it. What we know now is those leaky pipes are causing a lot of this inflow and intrusion that we're dealing with, that they also affect the quality of the groundwater. So particularly in the downtown area where we have a high groundwater table, there was a heightened need to deal with these I&I issues. Soil conditions play a part in this. Some areas in town are different than others. Again, the downtown being most acute. Also has creeks nearby that are affecting the movement of this groundwater. And another issue that is part of this equation is other connections that aren't part of our sanitary sewer at all. Folks that are just connecting to get rid of stormwater often will make a connection to the sewer system to deal with that. The second part of this was our treatment plant and dealing with the capacity needs. The I&I, particularly in high flow events, would overwhelm our system. We couldn't provide the treatment we needed to provide. We would exceed our solids treatment capacity. That was really an effect of the system just needing this upgrade, not designed for a city of this size. And again, violations of our discharge permit basically on a monthly basis. Early on in the discussions with our regional partners on how to address this. There was a plan that was rolled out to update the downtown plant to accept effluent from our regional partners, the State Patrol and Department of Corrections. Over time, that plan was modified to what we have today, and that's building a satellite facility. That satellite facility is serving our regional partners, but it also provides us the capacity to meet new development and other customers in the northern part of the UGA. It produces a Class A reclaimed water, which is a nice byproduct to have. We can use that for just about any purpose, but for drinking water, certainly for irrigating fields and those types of things, industrial uses. So we have a commodity that's a byproduct of this that I think is just an added attraction. We are, by completing the satellite plant, reducing the amount of volume of effluent that's discharged into Oakland Bay. As you're well aware, Oakland Bay is one of the most prolific aquaculture fields in the West Coast, and we're helping to do our part to preserve that through these measures. This particular element of the project was finished in 2010 at a price tag of over $15 million, but most of that cost was borne by our regional partners. And they are also paying for the service of maintaining and building reserves to maintain this plant long term. And that's not a photo of somebody drinking some of our byproduct. I just thought that was kind of funny. This is an aerial view of the plant when it was about 95% complete. Folks maybe in the audience haven't seen that before, but this was designed so it can be built and expanded in phases. This initial phase is enough to accommodate our partners and provide the city some capacity to take on new customers, but there's enough room in the surrounding area to build 2 additional phases. So the long-term plan is to see that come through, and that's again spelled out in our CIP as a longer-range endeavor. But this facility has the capacity to increase threefold in terms of its daily ability to handle effluent from the northern area, northern Shelton UGA. Within our approach, we've landed on a sequence of events here. Some of these have been accomplished, as you see here. We initiated with Basin 1, the core area of the downtown that was completed in 2000. Some time went by, but we eventually designed and constructed Basin 2 in more recent time. That was completed in 2008. We're currently working in Basin 5, which is basically the Hillcrest area around Olympic Highway South. That work's been going on over a year, and we believe in the next 6 to 8 months, probably less, the construction side of that will be done. We'll have closeout and other types of things to drag on that project over time, but the construction end of it is nearing its end. And that's a very large basin that we expect to complete. We've initiated the design for Basin 3, which is the final basin in the downtown area. And we'll talk about that a little further in the presentation here, but the goal is to be prepared so that as the funding mechanism we choose is available, that we're ready to move forward and complete the last of the downtown basins. Our plan is to also tackle some of this I&I work incrementally, and I'll speak about this in some detail, but we want to move from this current and past practice of tackling these basins as large projects and try to bite off pieces of a basin with some maintenance activities that we'll do over time with our city crews. We think this will save us a whole lot of money and avoid the need to borrow these large sums of money to tackle these basins. We can incorporate this into our operations. In addition to all that work, we had a couple sewer lines that were in Goldsboro Creek. And you may recall that Ecology was also asking us to address those. We removed the force main out of Goldsboro Creek in 2007. There's a bridge now on the east side of the creek. If you go past First Street, you see that little green structure there. That's the force main now out of the creek. The second portion of that was a gravity main that was crossing the creek on the west side. That was completed as part of this Neelam Park Pump Station project, which the picture is showing in partial completion. That pipe is still in the creek, but it is not essentially used as our day-to-day operation. It's only there right now is for emergency needs, and to help us to better understand what we need to do to most effectively stabilize the creek bottom, whether that pipe serves some purpose or not, and that's part of an ongoing discussion. But we are no longer in a position where some damage by a tree root or something coming down the creek during a high flow event would bust a pipe and cause a catastrophic discharge into the Oakland Bay and affect our aquaculture industries here. So that portion has been done and it is fully completed. Describing some of the work we did with the downtown plan, we addressed our long-term capacity needs. We increased the solids handling capacity of the system by 100%. This takes us to a 20-year planning horizon, certainly for the downtown area, and I'll speak to how that addresses our larger UGA area in a moment. It also, along with the I&I development that has occurred, provided us some certainty for a new development, and I think that was a big milestone in itself. You may recall a few years ago we were in a moratorium for sewer connections. We had a waiting list, if you will, for folks that could come and connect, but we had a limitation on that, and this was a struggle for any large development coming into Shelton to describe how are you going to address our sewer needs. We have limited capacity, we have I&I issues all over town. We have a great deal more certainty than we had then. This was a big project, though. It cost $38 million. It's now complete. This is what it looks like from the air. This is a huge undertaking, one of the biggest projects in the history of Shelton. Offers a number of environmental benefits, some of which I've described, but in terms of the plant operation, we added a process to remove nitrogen from the effluent. This will help the biological aspects of what's going on in the estuary and the interaction there with the fish and the aquatic life. We changed from a chlorine treatment to a UV treatment, so the effluent now does not have a chlorine component to it. And we incorporated the slack tide discharge tank. That tank allows us to retain effluent during slack tides, allows better mixing to occur as we release this effluent during tidal movement, and we extended the outflow pipe as well, I believe 96 feet. These environmental benefits are paying dividends in Oakland Bay. I believe 280 additional acres have been opened up for shellfish harvesting, in part to this activity. It's improved the natural features of the Oakland Bay, particularly the salmon movement through the estuary, and it's reduced that TSS stands for total suspended solids within our discharge. But wait, there's more, as Jason would say. We also added a process so that we now are producing a Class A biosolid. This is a fertilizer that you've probably heard in other jurisdictions. We now have the ability to produce that, and we're working through the final issues with having that in full production. This, as a benefit to us, produces or reduces the amount of solids that's in our discharge. It helps us to provide a fertilizer to the community for free, and we have the capacity within that system to accept effluent from other jurisdictions. So this could be a benefit that the region could gain from, not just for Shelton.
Not to break up your thing there, but now I've been told that fertilizer can be put on my vegetable garden. Is that a true statement?
Mike, is that a true statement? That's my understanding as well.
So I'm excited about that part of your presentation.
We'll have you back up the truck tomorrow. How about that?
There you go. I need it.
So transitioning to the dollars and cents of all this, providing some figures here for the I&I work and our capital work moving forward. This year, our capital investment is going to be about $7 million. That's predominantly completion of Basin 5. Our investment in 2014 is $5.2 million, and that anticipates that we will move forward with the Basin 3 construction project. Or as you can see, though, our investment in 2015 starts to diminish considerably. Part of our objective is to try to cap the amount of capital projects that the utility is taking on and reduce the amount of debt that we are continuing to accrue, and we're transitioning to that position as part of this comp plan effort. These last points sort of describe the magnitude of these projects, and I think that's worth describing. Basins 1 and 2 combined were just under 22,000 lineal feet of pipe that was replaced. As you can see, in Basin 5 is nearly twice the size of both of those basins, almost 8 miles of pipe. Basin 3 is almost the size of both of those basins combined, a little less. Basins 6 and 7 are described there as well. Those are newer basins. They're modern in some respects. There's certainly pipe that's aged, and there's pipe that's relatively new. So tackling those is a different approach anyway. Our objective is to start to look at Basins 4 and 6. Basin 4 is a very small basin, and just continually make steps to improve the I&I issues that we're dealing with, to monitor that, but to, again, track away from this large basin-wide effort that requires a lot of debt capacity. So as we describe the sewer comprehensive plan, we'll be bringing that for you in the coming weeks. That plan, just again in its larger sense, was developed by, in part, taking a lot of planning work that we've done over the course of the last 15 or 20 years and combining that into a single plan, which there's been a lot of effort done to study and analyze our sewer systems, but not a real planned update for quite some time. So this plan provides that single document. It will assess what we need to do as a utility to provide service to the entire UGA. That has never really been analyzed before. Part of that is what infrastructure is needed to eventually serve the Johns Prairie area, and in particular the industrial development out there. It updates the 6-year and 20-year efforts, again, trying to assess what our needs are for long-term and for near-term. And again, we'll hopefully have that here in a few weeks in its completed fashion and begin a public process and discussion with agencies and others as we formally adopt that plan. This next slide describes some of the capital improvements that you're going to see in that plan, and there's some abbreviations here, but in essence, this moving down from the top, we anticipated Basin 3 and included that in the plan. How much that's going to cost is unknown. We're making estimates, though, and those estimates varied. Our own engineers estimated this project. Our design firm has been pretty far along in the design and have refined their estimates accordingly along the way. Our consultant that prepared the sewer comprehensive plan looked at this just in terms of lineal feet of pipe, size of material, and sort of did a quantities estimate analysis of the project and came up with their own estimate. Their estimate is a little higher. It's at $3.8 million, but that is the number that we used in our analysis moving forward. So there's a little bit of I believe it's a conservative number in terms of what this project may really cost, but that's what you'll see in the plan. The plan describes these trunk lines within the city that we need to address over time. And mainly these aren't necessarily an issue because of I&I issues. They're an issue because of capacity issues, that we have certain pipes in limited areas that are approaching their capacity now, and as new development occurs, we need to figure out how to upsize those or make sure we can accommodate development as it occurs. In particular, the trunk line 1 that's described here is a line that runs in Mountain View that will, we anticipate, serve the Shelton Hills development, particularly the phase 1 of that development, and that line is reaching its capacity right now. So we're going to be discussing with Shelton Hills on how to address this particular aspect of our infrastructure needs as part of their phase 1. The other trunk projects, the trunk lines are smaller in scale, and they're in different parts of town, and they're not as much of a heightened concern as that particular trunk 1. But we've built those into the plan as well. And overall, those will take about $1.2 million to address all of them over a 20-year horizon. The plan includes second and third phases of the satellite plan, as I earlier described. Those are expensive endeavors. But the first, or the second phase, if you will, is not anticipated. It's anticipated around 1919 in the plan, but we don't believe that will necessarily play out as things go on. What we are anticipating is to include in part of the Shelton Hills development of their systems a diverter that will allow us to divert our effluent flows between the satellite plant and the downtown plant. And by doing that, one of the benefits will be to extend the capacity of the satellite plant. Otherwise, we would have to begin implementing a second phase sooner. But by being able to shuttle some of that effluent down to our downtown plant, we can extend the time frame that we need to actually implement phase 2. That will probably go beyond that 2020 horizon. And it's not unlikely that phase 3 might even approach that 2030 horizon. The last item here is a new satellite plant in Johns Prairie. The cost associated with that is in the slide. It's about $23 million. And of course, that's a long-term item. That's probably on the far end of the 20-year horizon, and that's not built in. Neither one of those projects, in fact, are built into the analysis in terms of what we need to do with the rates now. It's something to think about, but it's not in any of the rate analysis that we're contemplating at this time. So before I get into the rate increase, this sort of tells the story of all those projects and all those endeavors and what that means in terms of the cost of the utility. Basin 5 was secured through 2 loans. One was through the Public Works Trust Fund. That's the first bullet here. We are already paying back that loan. We started paying it back in 2011. The debt service on that loan is about $346,000. That's an annual payment. Second bullet describes the other funding source for the Basin 5 work. This was a USDA bond. That annual payment is about $213,000. We anticipate that we'll need to commence that payment in around 2014. That taking the project to its completion, getting closeout documents and all of that will probably take us into 2014, but no further than that. At that point, we will be making payments on that bond as well. The bottom bullet describes the payments for the wastewater treatment plant, the big project. We started paying that with a half payment in 2012 of nearly $500,000. The annual payments for that loan are just under $1 million, and that will commence this year. We will owe the USDA $1 million this year of new money for debt service on the wastewater treatment plant. So how are we going to pay for all that? We have 2 scenarios that we've developed here as part of our analysis. One would increase the rates 22% for the remainder of this year, which is 8 months. And that scenario, the scenario 1, assumes that we will need to find additional capital funding to complete Basin 3. And that's built into that rate analysis. And in fact, it shows here that we're anticipating that we would begin to make $169,000 debt payments in 2014 to start paying that debt, and that is included in this performance. Scenario 2 is an annual rate increase of 20% for this year. But that assumes that we would move forward to Basin 3 if we receive grant funding. That would be grant money that we would not be need to build into our debt reserves or pay it back. As part of Scenario 1, I should describe this further. We anticipate with Basin 5 that we are not going to utilize all the monies that we have requested through our loan. That, in fact, some of that money could be put toward Basin 3, and that the balance would be transferred to fund that, and that the other portion of that, the unmet portion, would be somehow circulated through a different loan. That is not the Scenario 2. Scenario 2 is 100% grant money. We would return the unused portion of the Basin 5 funds as part of that rate structure.
Steve, can I interrupt you for a minute there? I see a lot of jaws dropping out there at 22 and 20%. Can you equate that to a dollar figure so that it's a little bit more palatable?
I can. Here it is. So the average single-family residence in town uses 738 cubic feet of water per month. This is the average. Some folks are more and some folks are less. But on a total, that's our average. So the top portion describes what your current rate is today. You have a base rate of $26.65, and your consumption charge, as you can see, is $0.0533, or just over a nickel per cubic foot. Combined, your average single-family sewer charge is $65.99. Again, that's average. Under the proposed rates, those the base rate and the consumption charge would increase 20% on scenario 2. That would change your base rate to $31.98. That would change your consumption charge to 0.0624 cents per cubic foot. And that would affect your sewer rate by roughly $13. It would be, as proposed, $79.21. So for the average user, the average single family, that's the increase that would be reflected on their bill for their sewer charge.
And if you take less showers, you can keep the rate the same, right?
Well, it depends. How many less showers you're talking about? Our community as a whole has done a good job trying to conserve water, and that usage is probably a little less than you'd find in other cities. But our citizens have done a lot to conserve water over time, and I think they've done their share to kind of maintain low rates themselves. So just before I finish up here, we've got some other factors I just wanted to spell out. Those debt service payments that I described earlier result in a revenue deficiency of just over $1 million for the utility for this year. That's why we're requesting this. In both scenarios, scenario 1 or 2, the assumption was that we would collect that new rate for the final 8 months of the year. And part of doing that is the timing at which this action is taken. In order to be able to bill and collect that new rate, we need to have the Commission consider this ordinance this evening, take a second reading as part of a public hearing next week, and be able to advertise that in the paper before the end of the month. That will allow this schedule to be maintained. If we deviate from that, it will probably mean that we have to have a little bit higher rate than I'm proposing here, because we'll have less months, in essence, to collect that difference, that $1 million that's on that bullet 1. In both these scenarios, what we tried to do is to soften this rate over 2 years, and this analysis would require, as part of a second step, a rate increase for 2014 as well. But we are not trying to either land all of that increase on 1 year or the other. We're trying to expand it over a longer period of time. As part of what we considered in our capital work, I described this briefly, that we would add $200,000 to our operations commencing in 2016 as a way to avoid borrowing further capital for these large basin projects. That is also built into the reserve or the revenue needs for the utility. And the rates do assume that we would commence this work for the satellite plant phase 2 in 2019. And that's, again, conservative. We don't believe that that will be necessary, particularly if we move forward with a diverter project that we anticipate in Shelton Hills. We think we can stave off that need, and in turn stave off the need to reserve those revenues for some time. So there's a little bit of a conservative element to this. There's some uncertainty in this. We don't know what direction we're going for Basin 3 just yet. We don't know how fast Shelton Hills will move. So that's playing into our recommendation. We believe that it would be prudent to adopt a rate increase as soon as you can to allow us to be able to collect these increased revenues right away. but not to adopt a rate increase for 2014, to allow us to have some time to see what our options are in Basin 3 and get more information and come back later in the year with more precise information before you move forward with a 2014 or a longer-term approach for a rate hike. I think that closes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Steve. According to my notes, what we need to do is announce this as a first reading of this. Is that correct? I don't see that in, actually, I wrote that based upon what you said. This would qualify as a first reading. Oh, there's more fine print. And by the way, I'm sure my fellow commissioners do this also, but almost every meeting I attend with our city administrator and staff, I beg them to find money other than the ratepayers. I mean, I beg them to find. I says, listen, if there's ever anything out there, any grants, and we are moving forward, we've hired a lobbyist to try and get additional funding for Basin 3. I am constantly looking for other ways than to continue to raise on the ratepayers. But if you lived here very long, you've understood that Shelton has gone through a huge change concerning all this work that we've done over the years, and the bottom line, it was a broken system and it had to be fixed. So anyway, that's my little statement on that.
Steve, I know you were hesitant about saying anything about 2014, but I really think that, we should take the medicine now and kind of give a little indication to what you're talking about for 2014 also.
The rate structure would include a 20% increase for 2014 also. At that point, we would have righted the ship, if you will, and the rate increases would largely just reflect a cost of living increase or inflation adjustment. And around 2016, I believe, it begins to build reserves for these other larger projects that are on the horizon. And that's part of the uncertainty, is how soon will we need to do that. But it's pretty certain we're going to need a similar increase in 2014. But we don't know how much yet, because in part we don't know how Basin 3 will be funded, or if we choose not to fund that project.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it's kind of hard medicine to swallow that we're going to have close to a 40% increase in the next 2 years. But I think it's important to put it out there. Like Mayor said, that this has been a long time coming, 35, 40 years of nothing being done, and all of a sudden having to correct it in the last 4 or 5 years. That now we got to pay for it. So we don't have a lot of choice.
And I think you brought up an important point too, Steve, that part of this is building up reserves for the next big thing that comes along, because that was part of the thing that we found ourselves in 4 or 5 years ago, is that these things all needed to be replaced and we didn't have any money saved up to do it. So we really looked long and hard at any kind of funding mechanism that we could find. We put together a regional partnership that helped us tremendously, but ultimately it needs to be paid for, and now we're having to face that, and I really don't want to put that on future generations of having to look at a plant that's past its lifespan and no way to replace it. So we need to think about building up some reserves so that we're not in that position again. And I don't mean to be flip. I know that it's a difficult thing to do, and all three of us up here are also ratepayers. So we're in the same boat. But I remember a man that we worked with fairly early on in this process, and he told me that the only two things you need to know about sewers is that it runs downhill and it costs a whole lot. And we're finding out that is true. So I don't want to make light of it by any means, but the consequences of not doing the projects were just ones that we really couldn't look at. I mean, we would have endangered our shellfish industry greatly. I wasn't going to go there. We were in a position already of not allowing any other building to take place, just because we couldn't handle the sewage that it would generate. So, the consequences were to stop growing, and in some cases to go backwards. And I really didn't think that was a viable alternative. So we find ourselves now in a position of having to pay for that. And it's unfortunate that this generation is having to pay for some of the things that past generations didn't do. But that happens. And I think if we all look at it as a way to help future generations, that makes it a little more palatable, hopefully. For me, it does, anyway.
At this point, I feel comfortable okaying this ordinance, this first reading for a 1-year period of the 20% increase.
That's what the ordinance contains.
That's right. And so that's where I am on this meeting tonight. So next week, that's right, March 25th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Written statements are accepted, and we can pack the room full and we can talk for hours if we need to, or 1 hour and 59 minutes. And it's important. It's important to me. I mean, literally, I lay awake at night trying to think of other ways to pay for this stuff. And we are at a point to where we have to pay this bill, and we are seeking other avenues, other grant opportunities as we go through this process. And hopefully there will be some other money to help in future endeavors. So, are we ready? Yes.
Your Honor, just another thing. One of the reasons that we wanted to hold this meeting here tonight, we wanted to record that presentation so people would have a chance to see it from the community, the ones that will need to pay it. So we should have this our video on YouTube within the next couple of days, and we'll advertise that. And we're hoping, and we don't know whether we can get this done or not, we're hoping we can take maybe some testimony over YouTube as well. We're not sure how to do that. We've not done it before. But if you want to offer written testimony in that way, that's open to you. You can send us a letter, or you can come and talk next week as well. So anyhow.
All right. Are we ready for the reading?
Yeah, and you'll be able to get to the YouTube site by through our website, to the city's website. There'll be a link to it.
Okay. Are we ready for reading of this ordinance? Here so.
Ordinance number 1824-0313. First reading. An ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, relating to sewer service, amending Shelton Municipal Code sections 14.28.020 through 14.28.060.
Okay. I don't have any other print on what else we do at this point. So do we need to take a motion to approve this? Nope. First reading.
One more thing. In the Washington legislature, we have a request into the two capital committees in the House and Senate to get capital dollars to help us with the Basin 3 project and another project as well. So if you have a relationship with a legislator and you have a stake in keeping the rates down, that might be you might want to think about that. So thank you.
All right. Very good. Next on our agenda, we're almost done with this meeting, is an administration report.
Is it and could there be a future with a car?